hot.
Okay, welcome to the Picard Maneuver. My name's Tim.
And I'm Joel. Cheers.
Cheers. We've never said that before, but that's cool.
It made sense because we both said it. So clearly, somehow it made sense.
Oh, we had cups in our hands and we're about to drink, so that's a natural thing to say.
Yeah, what are you going to say?
All right, so
Drop and give me 20. No, you don't say that.
So what are we here to do today? What are we talking about?
Today we're talking about Star Trek Picard, Episode 9, Hide and Seek.
Hide and Seek. Yeah, exactly. So we just watched it this afternoon. It's a new episode today. It's the penultimate episode of the season.
Okay. Yeah. Well, how many? I keep asking this, and I should have, again, I could research this. But how many episodes are in?
10. There's 10 episodes in the season.
It does not feel like the second to last episode to me.
Did it to you? It did to me. It was trying to wrap up a bunch of stuff.
But then it literally left it open for now we have to deal with this.
It tried to wrap up a lot of B-plot character things and then set up the final episode for the final episode climax.
Oh.
But did it do it well?
Did it do it
Was
well?
it a completely bonkers episode that didn't make any sense?
Let us know what you think. We're going to dive into that here in a second, and we're going to tell you what we think.
Exactly.
Because that's what we're trying to answer. Did it do it well? And my short answer for that is, I believe no. What do you think, Tim?
It was a problematic episode, but it's an episode where there's going to be a lot to talk about. One thing we sometimes say, but I think usually forget to, is there's going to be spoilers ahead.
Oh, yeah.
This will be a spoiler review. We usually go basically
through the episode
and commentary, give deep, insightful commentary on what the heck's going on and what the heck's going on with the transporter. They've really, really struggled with the transporters this season. And I think that's a sort of a perfect example of how they've tried to have all these sort of random characters arbitrarily going off in different directions to just do things for an episode and then come back with. And the fact that those had to happen in France and in Los Angeles, and for them to be isolated when they did certain things, but not isolated when they did other things, they've just, throughout the season, have just arbitrarily had the transporters either broken or not broken.
Turned off, turned on.
Throughout the episode.
This person's controlling it. This person's not. This person has the transportation technology. I want to get into, actually, our first screenshot deals with this. Now, keep in mind, or we'll apologize ahead of time for the fact that our screenshots are dark and we're brightening them now. We'll figure this out even better in the future. You wait and see. Maybe we'll come into the past from the future to help ourselves deal with this in arbitrary ways.
Well, they're just guides for what we're talking about. Reminders.
Hey man, don't downplay our they're just nothing. They're great. But the first one, what you want to show that? Let's show that.
Yeah, so
now,
this is...
I want anyone comment below before I explain this. What do you think this is? I mean, if you've seen the episode, you know, but is this fireflies? Yes, kind of. We both drink at the same time. So the question with this image is, well, here's what's happening. In the beginning, we start again with Rios on the ship with the doctor and her son. And I don't remember, what were they doing last episode? What was the dilemma there?
There was no dilemma.
No, it was 4 pieces of cake.
Relationship. Yeah.
3 pieces of cake.
There's 4 pieces of cake.
4 pieces of cake. There are 4 cakes. So they're on the ship, and then suddenly, this is the Borg.
But the Borg beam in, and a lot of Borg. So we saw the Borg, them setting up the Borg henchmen at the end of the last episode, and there was 6 of them, a half a dozen of them, that apparently Adam Soong was able to call up within an hour.
Hello, henchmen.
And they're all there.
Need you. And you know how I told you one day I would call upon you? That day is now. And
they keep beaming in. And so there's I don't know how many. There's 30 of them at least.
Oh, probably.
Assuming that they beam, it's possible that a bunch of them beam in and then they re-beam them. They beam them, and so we keep seeing the beaming of the same people. We never see more than a handful in the different fight sequences. We never see more than a handful in one spot at a time.
Okay.
But anyway, my point is that A, there's a bunch of them now, and B, she's got a transporter. She can transport all around.
That's the bigger issue for me. We can maybe convince ourselves that somehow Adam Soong got a hold of a bunch of people and has control over a bunch of people. That
mercenaries.
Not willingly, but to take them over. Once one of them saw the first one get Borgified, you'd think then they'd be like, hey, wait a minute, like, I'm not down for this. And they'd had the guns in that moment, and they had numbers. So why didn't they just say, like, screw this? But no, I guess they went forward with it. And here they are beaming in with not just a transporter, but this is the classic green Borg transporter. In an earlier episode, it might have even been the last one. I think it was the last one. You have Jurati as, like, the Borg queen eating car batteries to try to create more nanites. So I asked you, kind of jokingly, did she create Borg transporters out of car batteries? Evidently, yes.
And then transported them from Los Angeles, where I think we're assuming Dr. Soong was,
to
France. And you bring up a sort of an interesting point there, is that we kind of sort of assume that Dr. Soong is somewhat famous as a mad scientist, at least in some circles.
Yeah, I think he was.
But he's rich and connected enough to be able to get a bunch of mercenaries.
Right.
So these mercenaries would know who he is. Let's say he is like an Elon Musk character to these mercenaries' eyes. He's like a rich, crazy guy who's willing to pay them to go on crazy stuff. If you were a mercenary who was hired by Elon Musk, and then this crazy cybernetic lady started like turning people into drones, yeah, they would react to that. They'd be weirded out by that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't just be like, oh yeah, this is what we signed up for. Like, no, I don't think this is what they signed up for.
And I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but...
Well, we're also getting really stuck on this first image. We have a lot of images to go through.
Now, fair, but remember we asked this question at the end of the last episode. They never really explain how Borgified, how assimilated these drones are.
Yeah, and you
They're
can't really
basically
tell.
just generic action movie thugs.
Yeah.
They don't seem to act like the Borg Queen is controlling them. And there is a couple scenes where they're basically the henchmen of Adam Soong, and Adam Soong like orders them around.
Right. And they're not attached to any collective.
Yeah, so
there's no hive mind.
There's presumably no hive mind because there didn't seem to be. The
Right.
Queen wasn't acting like there was a hive mind, and you never see non-hive people like Adam Soong ordering around Borg henchmen.
Right, because they can't, because they're connected to a hive mind.
So I think they were just made a little stronger with some nanite technology.
And then fully volunteered for this. The other thing I was going to say is also, not only do they have the green classic Borg transporters, they've gone and they've taken their guns that they were going to use and they made sure to attach green lasers.
Yeah, green lasers, so they're classic Borg. Which
because
I was okay
how
with that.
would we
like
know that they were Borg without the green lasers?
Other than we'll talk about this, but there's a
they're just
ridiculous
shining everywhere.
Scooby-Doo sequence later on.
Yeah. So
someone at some point though does say that someone, I think even Seven says at some point implies that they're no longer human. They've been assimilated, so it's okay to just kill them all.
Yeah, so there's that too.
That's more just action movie thug rules too, right?
And usually it doesn't need to be said.
Yeah, so it was awkward.
Anyway, it was awkward. So we liked it so much that we took another still of more Borg beaming then onto the ship with Rios. Is that where they're beaming here?
Yeah, that's onto the ship with Rios.
Yeah, so then it's kind of like, okay, more Borg.
And Rios and the Doctor and the kid are there, and they're like, whoa, Borg people. And
I like the Borg. They're great baddies. But in this one, it's not really making a whole lot of sense. So, again, apologies for this still. But what we're seeing here is then Rios and the Doctor and her child beam down with Picard and everyone else at the
chateau. So they
chateau.
sort of group together at the chateau, which they're setting up for sort of siege. But then immediately they sort of hide a little bit. And
I don't know what we were trying to show here, other than just a creepy, dark image of Rios and Laris. And I know what we were showing. Do you remember what it was? Why we took this? You cannot tell what's happening here. So we'll quickly explain it because I don't want to explain it. I don't want to get stuck on this image. What happens is, because we were talking in the other episode about how annoyed we were that Rios just randomly takes the Doctor and her son on the ship, because that's breaking a lot of rules. Like, you can't just take someone from a different time, and they have talked about don't frig up the timeline. And he directly is
butterflies.
I'll beam them onto the ship. So what happens is, in this moment, picture it in clarity, Rios is there. Picard sees the woman, the Doctor, and her son, and Picard kind of reacts with like, what are they doing here? And Rios says, oh, well, they've already been on the ship. And in this moment, Picard does one of his famous face palms. He does a face palm. He's annoyed. He's frustrated. So if you missed that, make sure you go back.
But it's cut off from the way we do the video.
Oh, you can't see Picard in that. Yeah. Well, it wouldn't matter to, like, even if you tried to switch it, it won't really matter. It's really not a good. There goes Tim.
Go back to it.
No, I want to see you moving yourself. Yeah, okay. You can just see his bald head, basically. So there he is. He's doing the face palm. Let's see if we can get you centered. You good?
Yeah, we're back. Good.
Yeah. So so you see him off to the side when Rios says, "Yeah, they were already on the ship." I forget exactly what.
Yeah,
Rios
it was the back of
and
his
Picard
face
goes,
palm.
because you can tell he's like, "This isn't good." But then they move on. It's not important. They don't talk about it for long. So anyway, did you want to say something on that?
We can talk about the next thing.
Okay. So now we're looking at.
She's trying to reuse the transporter, and she can't use the transporter because there's been some sort of
Right.
Before she was assimilated, Agnes disabled the transporter with I noted it because she called it a fractal lock, which is very similar to the fractal encryption algorithm that Data used in First Contact. So fractal encryption is the one thing the Borg Queen can never hack because it's fractal.
Yeah, I almost forgot. So in this scene when we're seeing Agnes, this is actually the Borg Queen and Agnes together, and then it shows them side by side because one is within the
they
other.
introduce this sort of side by side argument they do throughout the episode, and then in the climax they have a final argument.
Yeah, so she's frustrated. Borg Queen's frustrated right now because Agnes is kind of saying, "I've locked you out," and then the Borg Queen's like, "Well, I'll just search your brain and find it," and she's like, "Well, you can't because I didn't memorize it, so it's not something you can find." Let's go. Gotcha. That's the gotcha cam. So, and then what happens is another thing happens because then she's like, well, my Borg henchmen are going to do stuff. And then she's like, and again, apologies for this photo, I have a holographic Elnor to utilize now.
A defense hologram.
And it's Elnor. So in some ways I was kind of like, cool, we get to see Elnor again.
It was nice to see Elnor, but
I didn't really know how they'd use it in the episode. So I don't mind seeing Elnor. I like Elnor. But at the same time, I was like, who had the time? I think Agnes says she did it. But the amount of programming that would go into creating, and we'll talk about this later too. Well, I'll just say it now. Not only is it Elnor, he has Elnor's emotions and memories. Because he says at one point to Raffi,
yeah, we have a shot of that.
I have his memories.
It's sort of the entire
thoughts.
Payoff for Raffi's entire arc this season.
So I guess he kind of needed that. So then we're also going back and forth between the whole episode between Picard's memories of his mother, of his father, and of his Victorian life in the future.
His Victorian past of the future.
Yeah. Like this home is just looks, but you can see some futuristic looking things in there, but mostly, yeah.
To be honest, just the way they dressed and the way they talked, this episode, it just lost me. It was just too silly to really make sense and pay off for what they were trying to do.
Okay.
In my
Let's
view.
put the thing on the screen. Whoop, whoop, right? The alert, Tim alert, that like he has said that this one just didn't work for him. Because usually you're like, you find the redeeming qualities, but this one you're like, it's just too silly for me.
Yeah, I've got like 2 notes of redeeming qualities maybe in this episode, but yeah. But I think a key point, we'll talk more about when we get the sort of the payoff of the sequence. I'm just saying aesthetically, aesthetically they spent too much time showing their funny Victorian funny old world 19th century clothes and weird British way of talking.
Yeah, it confused me.
And let's play hide and seek. Like it just was too cliched. It was just too silly.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about this before too, that with good story, sometimes it's like too simple and complicated at the same time. You don't emotionally connect to it because there's so much going on in this episode that the whole time I'm going, like, I can't feel what's going on. I have no emotion connected to it because they go so quickly to another thing and then back to a thing. And then you're like, why is he hiding? Why does he get his foot stuck in wood? Like we talked about all these things that we were like, yes, I get that they're plot points. So I'm not literally asking why did it happen, but I'm asking why did the writers think that was a good way to develop what we were seeing? So anyway, here we have, this one's tough to see too, but this is Rios who has been shot.
So there's
another arbitrary thing.
Yeah, it's just so arbitrary and awkward how there's tons of shooting and stuff. Only Rio gets shot, and then they arbitrarily all split up.
Yeah, and they've done this a lot in the show.
They all the time and so, and tied to like Picard's like beam Rios away and get rid of the doctor and the kid, which makes sense. But then he's like, then turn off your transporter to St. Laris, because Laris also has a transporter. Yeah, Laris had a site-to-site transporter all along.
Yeah. So that would have been really useful for a lot of things.
And it would continue to be useful in this whole weird Scooby-Doo siege. But he's just like, and turn it off arbitrarily.
Yeah. So this hasn't happened yet. They're still just hiding here. They haven't beamed away yet. But the Picard comes in and kind of says, let's get them out of here, and then let's shut off the transporter. Which again, you reminded me because I had forgotten that had happened, which was really surprising.
Well, it's cool because he spends most of the episode trying to turn the transporter back on, so he can come in at the climax.
Did we figure out what this screenshot was? I don't even know what that's supposed to be. We've got a really dark one. I'll show you. Figure that out, and then send us a message and let us know what we grabbed a screenshot of there, because I cannot figure out what that is. So let's move on. If you think of it, let me know.
I think I know what it was.
Oh.
It was the fight sequence between. It's after they split up. Actually, was a positive of the episode I wanted to mention.
Oh, well, I'm going to move away from the screenshot, though, because it's so bad.
But basically, they all arbitrarily split up in this sort of a Scooby-Doo thing around the manor.
Yeah, they're being followed, and then you just see the green laser beams, and they go, whoop.
But there is a fight sequence with Raffi and Seven fighting one guy.
You thought that was a good fight sequence.
I thought it was a well-choreographed fight sequence. So often on Star Trek and a lot of things, it's really hard to sort of have a fight sequence that sort of makes sense with the dynamic and sort of like who would win, which isn't always important for the plot or whatever. But I thought it was a really well-choreographed fight scene of them fighting one big guy and being able to not by themselves take him down, but together they were able to take him down.
Yeah, sure. It was okay. But I get your note. It's not a bad note. So that's what that was. Now we cut to this. We grabbed the screenshot because we thought it was kind of a funny sequence, because Elnor is looking for a weapon and he grabs 2 tiny guns, then he grabs a slightly bigger gun, and then finally he looks in the little weapons booth and finds a sword, which I guess that must be Elnor's actual sword that he had put there, because it'd be weird for a starship to have, or any sort of...
No, it can't be the sword he actually put there, because this ship is from the mirror, the alternate universe, where Elnor had never been on that ship before.
Here, let's... I don't know.
So it doesn't make any sense that he would have... Because remember, they just broke into there, and he was immediately killed as soon as they beamed in.
So did Rios just randomly have a sword?
So it had to have been a sword that Rios has had.
Okay.
It just was a samurai sword that he had
Why not?
But I was going to say that sort of thing of it's a classic action movie thing. And I think Pulp Fiction has the same scene where he gets a gun
Looking
and
at
a bigger
different weapons.
gun, and then he chooses a samurai sword.
Yeah, so it's interesting and funny in a movie
fun.
where you could believe there'd be a sword there. I had issues with this holographic character. Well, yeah, we were going to talk about that more after anyway. But there was a funny scene where Agnes says, well, that's where you've been hiding, or I found you, or whatever. And then he's like, I wasn't hiding. And then he immediately jumps away and hides again.
Yeah. and he was hiding.
He was hiding. Yeah. And then you said, it's funny because it's such an open ship.
Yeah, it's just like one big room.
There's like 4
it's all
rooms
open
probably.
Concept. You can basically see like the entire cargo bay. And at the very end of the cargo bay, there's like a medical bay and a transporter.
Yeah.
But if you look at from the bridge, you can basically look back and see the entire thing. You can even see like that hollow... That
it's
part.
not super complicated.
It's not like there really is. There's like little nooks and crannies to sort of in the edges to hide, and maybe if there was more cargo, there's places to hide. But
right,
it didn't really make any sense.
Yeah, there was kind of just those 2 funny moments. I just thought it was hilarious when he was like, "I wasn't hiding," and then he jumps and runs away again. So here we just took a screenshot. We just wanted to show.
Well, she disabled the transporter, and
he's fixing it.
The way that, because he doesn't need to fix it. It's not a broken transporter. It's a turned off transporter. It doesn't.
Yeah, he turns it back on by tinkering with it.
By tinkering with it, which is something that happens in Star Trek all the time.
Tinker. Yeah, it's fine. I don't really care about tinkering. Mess with technology, turn stuff back. That doesn't bother me. It's just more that why was it turned off in the first place, I think was the issue we had. But anyways, fixing that. Picard's mother in the catacombs. So there's a lot of cutting back and forth in this episode of them in this creepy maze-like basement where I still don't really know why they were going down there. Like, she's mentally ill. They've made that clear. She takes him down there one time and then disappears, and the father finds him with his foot stuck in wood. But I was like, why was she gone even in that moment? Where was she?
So is this,
she's not
is this
dead.
the time we want to break that entire down? Because I think
no, that's fine. Let's keep moving.
Because there's another scene later on where they do it again. No, maybe this is the scene.
I think it is, because there's the father getting him out of the. I think that's where his foot was stuck in wood.
Okay, so this is an important thing that's been, or apparently an important thing that's introduced for Picard's backstory in this season. So we should break it down a little bit. So basically, they decide to play hide and seek.
That's it.
Which is like
that's all there is.
How
to
she explained it. I run. You count to 5 and come find me.
Right.
And then she's suffering from some sort of
we don't know.
Actually, Picard calls it extreme melancholy.
Okay.
Which is again a very 19th century way.
Yeah, to describe like depression or bipolar maybe, or.
And the reaction to it is to lock her in a room, which again is very like melodramatic 19th century way of doing resulting to it. But so basically, she's sick, and she was like, she's obviously, and she has some sort of agoraphobia, or the opposite of agoraphobia.
Well, like not leaving the house.
Yeah, she doesn't want to go out somewhere.
That's agoraphobia, yeah.
Yeah, so I think they said that she had agoraphobia, so she wants to go deeper and run away from something, run away from demons, by running away from monsters, by going deeper into the catacombs. But the catacombs were made from World War II because of the French resistance.
Right.
So there's secret catacombs.
Yeah, secret doors, little passageways.
But
Scary.
His father had always said, "Don't go down there because there's 1,000 ways to die. It's really dangerous." Because I guess we have a 400 or 500 year history of this
Booty
manor
traps.
where they rebuilt this place a couple times, evidently over the next 300 years after this, but they didn't renovate the dangerous.
Yeah, that's
basement.
stayed the same forever.
It's continued to be dangerous, but she isn't thinking about what's dangerous for the kid. She's thinking about, I need to run away right now and get away from here. So she runs down into
Hides.
She runs down and hides in the catacombs. Picard, the boy, follows
Gets
her.
his foot stuck.
Either thinks that they're still playing the game, and in doing so, he gets his foot stuck. But she doesn't go back for him. She just keeps running and hides somewhere.
And then you mentioned, I didn't remember this. It was what, 3 hours he was there for?
And in the couple episodes ago where they sort of explain it, I'm pretty sure he says that he was there for like 3 or 4 hours before his father found him.
Right.
In this sequence, it seems like he finds him right away.
Mm-hmm.
But that could just be the way it's edited.
Yeah,
or
it could just be
remembered or
that
whatever.
they kind of cut
But
that
he
time.
gets his foot stuck in that sort of. It looked like the top of a well, right? It was like an underground well, or it could be a tunnel for the freedom fighters. But
Right.
she gets stuck there, so the father comes down and finds him. He's like, "Oh, you've been stuck here. I'll rescue
I
you.
remove you.
Remove your foot," because he couldn't have done that.
I think
on
that
his
was the
own.
line, wasn't it? I remove you from this spot.
And thus rescued him, but she had put him in danger by bringing him down there. So the father wants to trap her, wants to keep her,
The son safe?
lock her in a room
Right.
to keep his son safe. Picard has a secret key, a skeleton key, that has been there for hundreds of years, that he has hidden somewhere, that he's able to then go see his mother with, and the father doesn't find out about this. And she rests with him, and they go to sleep,
Leaves the door open.
and he leaves the door open.
Well, we have... Because you're going into that, we have photos of that, but that's further ahead. So maybe that didn't happen yet.
so that didn't happen.
So let's get
yet.
to that in a minute here, but yeah.
Okay, so we'll finish that thought there. But
Okay.
the key right now is the point that because they've been in the catacombs, the father thinks it's dangerous enough that she has to be locked up.
Yeah, and I wasn't...
Not taken to like a mental health care or to see a doctor or
Yeah,
under
keep in
special
mind, this
care.
is 2023.
It's the arbitrary 2310.
23, yeah,
Because
so-
Picard, it's like
When he's a
2402 when the show happens. And Picard's like 100 years old, so
Yeah.
it's like it's 2310.
So it's quite far in the future, and yet the way they deal with someone who's mentally ill is lock her in a room and, keep her
only
away, keep her
after
away.
she does something apparently really dangerous.
Which I really didn't like how they dealt with mental illness in this
Hmm.
in these episodes. I feel like they just used it again as a plot device instead of actually trying to explore it in a way that might have been healthy or shine a new light on it. They treated it like some kind of Victorian era like lock people away thing, which I didn't like. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, we'll
so
come back.
Picard finds a gun in the catacombs, an old World War kind of
Yeah,
two
so they
gun.
Scooby-Doo around the catacombs,
Scooby-Dooby.
and Adam Soong is chasing them with with his thugs, and they go into the catacombs, and on the way to fight,
Picard
he
just finds
one of the
this
World War
gun,
II guns. It's
Which
cool.
but he kind of just randomly opens a box and there it is and fires it and
Yeah, there's a really funny
It's
scene
cool.
where he's in the catacombs, and he's like, if you turn right, you go out into the garden, and we can retake the manor from there. If you turn left, you go back into the chateau.
yeah, and you're kind of like, oh, they're gonna go one of those ways, and then they see the green lasers and they're like, whoa, and then
We gotta go back.
Then they go back, so it's kind of also weird. So here's when finally Raffi, again on this ship that everything's pretty open and everyone could probably see each other.
So they're
She hasn't seen him yet.
independently fighting with the Borg in a different place in a different part of the chateau.
Yeah,
But they don't meet with them. They've gone off, and then they somehow get back. They fight
They're
a
in
bunch
the
of Borg,
ship.
and we see them kind of like, we're going to run, and we're probably not going to make it.
yeah.
And then we see them in the ship, and they're clearly like damaged, or like they have lots of
Were they
cuts and
damaged?
stuff.
Okay.
Well, they have both of them have a bunch of cuts and stuff. So they've obviously
that-
been in there's tons of off-screen them fighting through to actually get to the ship.
Okay, I didn't.
So they
yeah.
independently make it to the ship, and they run into Elnor.
Right. So Alnor kind of comes into this room when he's hiding after saying he isn't hiding and sees Raffi and says, Raffi? And she comes over. And then, as you mentioned, it's kind of that payoff. Do we have?
Oh, you can see his
Yeah, this is the photo that
you
we
can see
took
his
that-
hollow emitter too there. So that's how he's getting
So he
around.
does have that. Yeah, he has a hollow emitter, and obviously the safety protocols are turned off so he can be affected by people shooting at him, which is why I guess he's running away.
Evidently.
And here's the thing that I was going to bring up earlier, and we said, well, let's wait till we get to the photos. Do we have one more? No. Okay, that's it. So Raffi's kind of like, she starts trying to express some of her, like the stuff she's been dealing
guilt
with,
she's been
the guilt
feeling.
she's been feeling this whole episode.
And
Elnor says,
basically absolves it and says,
yeah, just quickly kind of says, well, I also have Elnor's memories and emotions.
At the time of his death.
Yeah, at the time of his death. And I can tell you that he didn't hold any negative feelings towards you.
He only had feelings of love. And then they hug.
Yeah.
And it resolves the entire guilt arc that she's had for the entire point of her character this season, I suppose.
Yeah, so it's been resolved with a holograph.
Yep.
So that brings up a lot of questions. So you could just accept that and be like, well, that's nice. But, one of the questions is just, earlier I had said, well, who created this program? And even if
Agnes did quickly off screen at some point.
Right. So cool. Even though it's hard to believe, sure, she's kind of like a really talented computer programmer. She used to work with AI and things like that. But then for her to be able to somehow, Elnor has already died. How did they capture Elnor's memories and emotions and put it in this character? Is that not something you would have had to do before someone's dying, like coding their thoughts? And like, that's a complicated thing.
Yeah, it's a new thing. I mean, they other Star Trek have sort of dealt with things like that. But
yeah. But it's literally in this moment, it's just, he just says it just to absolve her.
It doesn't really make any sense. That's the problem, is that it's just arbitrarily absolving her, what apparently was the point of her being here for this entire season.
And one of the questions I ask a lot, or have been asking a lot while watching this season, is just why? Why did this have to happen? It didn't need to happen this way. We know she's upset that Elnor's gone. It's cool that Elnor was there as this hologram. Why can't I? Does it matter?
One's right and one's wrong. One's my name.
And the other is not. But if I was a writer for this show, it wouldn't matter. But the point being that, in this moment...
Well, it was important for that absolving, is that a word? Of her resolving her arc, to hear Elnor say, I loved you. But he could have said something. He could have said something along the lines of like...
almost like a Data thing, where he's almost innocent of what's really happening, but somehow it absolves her by him just kind of saying like, well, I'm pretty fast and can slice people up. And then she's like, oh, he forgives me.
It was just a really awkward way to finish.
My point was just going to be, and I remember now, was just that he could have still been there and she could have expressed something to him, and it almost would have been more tragic and poetic if he just couldn't pick up on it and he was like, and then moved on, and then she's like, that's not the real Elnor. And you'd be like, you'd still, it wouldn't absolve the situation, but you don't need to. Anyway, I guess they felt they needed to. So next...
before we talk about this, there's another point that I did note that we didn't get any screenshots for, but basically Laris... Suddenly, earlier in the scene, Laris has some Romulan disruptors that she gives to people. Yeah. And then back at her apartment, she has some pads that are obviously Romulan pads, like they're Romulan shaped with Romulan symbols. Yeah. So she wasn't really hiring her that she was a Romulan.
Right, yeah, I guess before she had the ear cover and didn't admit or didn't say to Picard initially that she was Romulan, or what was that?
No, it was sort of like a payoff after they did their brain.
But then it's like, well, no, she had a full place full of Romulan gear, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to go to this. This was an interesting moment. So who was it?
Well, as soon as
who did this? Who beamed them? Was it Rios? For some reason, I think it was Rios.
No, it wasn't Rios. Oh. Rios hasn't turned his transporter on.
Oh, right. Yeah, his isn't working yet.
That's the big thing, is that when Raffi and Seven go back to the Serena, the Seven's like, give us back control of the ship, because for some reason the hologram of Elnor is actually controlling the ship now and has the fractal lock. And he's like, that doesn't make any sense. We don't want to give the Borg. And she's like, no, I've got a plan.
She has a plan, right?
Which I don't.
What was the plan?
I don't know.
To beam people into a wall.
Yeah, the plan was to then be in control of the transporters. Because remember, it's just arbitrary. Transporters are working, transporters aren't working, transporters are locked, transporters aren't locked. She suddenly has transporters so that she can do site-to-site beaming and then defeat all the bad guys.
And using it as a weapon, basically.
Basically use it as a weapon, which has always been sort of a problematic gray area in Star Trek, that they've always sort of brushed away the problems of just transporting anyone at any time to fix plot, as site-to-site transport is a dangerous, difficult thing to do.
Well, and I think it also just kind of ruins, there was... Okay, I'm just going to quickly bring up Star Wars, because someone had complained at one point in Star Wars that at one of the later films, they used hyperdrive as a weapon. So they had a ship aimed somewhere, and then they threw it into hyperdrive, and it basically all these Star Destroyers were destroyed. And this one person's main complaint was like, they've had hyperdrive for like a long time, and using it as a weapon kind of ruins the idea of that these ships can use hyperdrive as a weapon at any time, because they could have used that at any time to just destroy anything. Like, it's this powerful weapon. Even the Death Star could have been destroyed if they had just shot a ship in hyperdrive through the Death Star. Anyway, it felt like kind of a similar thing where it's like, if you can just take a transporter, like anytime there was a bad guy, they could have been like, transport him into that rock, and then he can't fight back. Like, so in this moment, this is what we're seeing, is like a bunch of the Borg baddies being transported into the basement of Chateau Picard, and the other thing
where they happen to be.
And then here you see, gosh, I hope you can see this, but
you can, sort of.
Not only did they get transported into the rock, but you can see like the one guy in the middle that maybe you can see a little bit, his leg has turned into stone for some reason. Like, so I don't know why when they got transported into the stone, they became stone.
They became statues.
Yeah, they like basically became stone, because you can see that guy's leg and everything else. So several things that I didn't.
On top of that, the insane thing about this is that now the catacombs have these henchmen statues that now have always been there.
Right.
They were now there when Picard was a kid running with his mother through the catacombs.
Right, and I had brought up, and you said this isn't an issue, because I said, well, isn't it though a different timeline? You were like, no, this is the new timeline, right? That's
they're going to fix this timeline presumably, and then this will have been the thing that happened.
So unless they say it somehow erases everything that's happened, then yes, the issue becomes there are now people frozen in the stones in the bottom of the catacombs that wouldn't have people in the future have seen this, because did they just, like, before they left, they were like, oh, get those guys out of the stone. Get those guys out.
We'll need a chisel.
We're going to chisel them out.
I'm a doctor, not a geologist.
There you go. So there's that. Let us know below. Why am I saying below? Let us know in the comments. I don't know, wherever you'd like to let us know. Write me a letter if you'd like, and let me know what you think of that. Are they in the rocks? Should they be there? Is that a different timeline? What do you think? So here we go. We're getting close to the end of the episode. This is kind of a standoff between Elnor, Raffi, and Seven, and Agnes / Borg Queen sitting on the ground, and they're like, we got her. She's surrounded. And nope, you don't got her. So this is a real hard thing to see, but this is actually... So what the Borg Queen does is she shoots out her tentacle things. She makes Elnor basically dematerialize. She hits him with a tentacle thing. He just disappears. He's gone. She hits the gun out of Raffi's hand and kind of knocks her over, and then stabs Seven in the belly.
So each tentacle is just completely arbitrary. It's sort of a death thing for Seven, but just sort of knocks
everyone else
Raffi
just
over.
Gets knocked over, yeah. And if they're accurate and she can control them and stab people in the belly, why didn't she do it with everyone and whatever? But anyway, so there's Seven. She's injured. At the same time, we didn't even, I don't think, mention this earlier, but Adam Sung, played by Brent Spiner, is pursuing Picard and Laris in this game of hide and seek that is meant to mirror the game of hide and seek that he played with his mother. And as he's doing that,
of the episode.
And that's the title of the episode. And as he's doing that, he's having these memories of his mother doing the hide and seek game with him. But at the same time, the Scooby-Doo kind of hide and seek things going on with Brent Spiner, with Dr.
And Adam Sung is completely sort of accepted that he's a villain.
He's a super
villain with like henchmen that is just looking to fight.
He had his own
guys.
villain music. Like every time he'd be on camera, like literally, I remember there was one scene where his music faded out and it went to the next scene because his music was so like loud and dominant. It was like dun dun dun, like this really heavy music. And now he's saying like evil villain stuff too. Like he's not just kind of, he's become not a character that kind of has depth and dimension. He's now just kind of
his motivation right now is a really vague idea of a future that a crazy Borg Queen told him about, where apparently
wasn't it Q that told him about? Or no, I guess they both kind of. Sorry, yeah, they both.
Well,
told
Q
him.
didn't really try to make.
Q's not in this episode at all, by the way.
Q didn't really try to trade that.
Oh, he just wanted to kill Picard with a Tesla.
Q just wanted to kill Picard with the Tesla in exchange for this drug that would help his daughter.
Yeah, the daughter's. By the way, the daughter's not in it anymore. Nobody cares about the daughter anymore.
She must be in the last episode, but we'll come to that. But yeah, no, his motivation is this idea. Like it's not even well defined what the future is going to be. But somehow, if he works with the Queen, the future is going to be good for him. Versus it will be not.
And he
good for
believes
him.
that, and not only does he believe it, but he believes it in a way that's made him completely evil and give up everything else he cared about and just hunt this guy down in some old building in France
and with a bunch of mercenaries.
Then they also never explain. I guess he just beamed in with all the Borg too. But yeah, so he's found Picard finally. He finally like catches up to him, and they're in this room, and he's saying evil things to them. And
this is my notes, but I keep looking at.
Yes, and I move away from the mic to breathe. So in this moment here, again, we're kind of wrapping things up.
So
and
she's going to finish
kill
off Seven.
Yep. And of course, what would be the most obvious thing to happen? Well, a single tear solves everything. not exactly in that way, but basically that's what happens. The tear falls, and then you hear the Borg Queen say, "Why am I crying?" And then, of course, Agnes responds, "It's not you crying, it's me." And then we have this thing of, the endorphins that you used to take control of me. Well, I'm now using this sadness to take back control of you, which I was just like, okay. I mean, it could have been hot dogs. Like, she could have been like, see me eating this hot dog, I can now take control back. Maybe that's a little more arbitrary. But, like, to me, the fact that she's just like, even when the endorphins thing happened, I was like, come on. Like, I didn't understand it. And then I even more so don't understand how the opposite is also like, now I'm using sadness to take back control.
But why even was this dynamic necessary? Because it's been pretty...
Well, it isn't.
It feels like, from what we know of the Borg Queen, she's a lot more independent than a regular drone. She's not assimilated like a regular drone.
Right.
Wouldn't there need to be some sort of synthesis between the Borg Queen and her for her to be a new Borg Queen anyway?
Yeah, I would think so.
Like, this sort of dynamic, I don't think was necessary. Like, so much.
No, because it could have just been, hey, I'm now control. Like, when we thought that anyway. Like, as a viewer anyway, I was like, Agnes isn't gone. They kept saying it. She's not gone. She's still there.
Yeah,
they could have just been like,
it.
She's just fighting back. I would have believed that. She's fighting back and trying to regain. It didn't have to be like, well, I'm using sadness now to get back at you. And I don't know. They probably, I'm sure someone somewhere thought when that idea got thrown out, that is genius. That is such a good idea. We'll use like the emotions. It just, to me, it makes no sense. So, Rios has fixed. Oh, we didn't even talk about, and I want to quickly talk about it, how the Doctor several times now, this is the second time, has used technology from the future. The one time was like the make his brain better thing. And then this time, how can I help you? Is there anything here I can use to help you with your gunshot wound? And he's like, oh, the tricorder. She picks it up, immediately knows how to use it. And the tricorder basically just shows this readout of the human body with like a bullet hole in the arm. And I was like, okay, so that's, in that moment, that's how that helped. Like, it's not like it's going to help remove the bullet hole. They didn't show that. It just was like, there it is. Even though I think it was the scene earlier or maybe right after where you clearly see he's got a bullet hole in his arm. Like, she didn't need the tricorder to tell her that. Yeah. Anyway, so he's fixed the transporter here.
And she, off camera, fixed her arm.
Well, here we go also. And this gave us a chance, obviously, to show the budding romance between Rios and Doctor, because we still don't know her name. I should have looked it up before this.
I did note the line she says, what if your future was here and it was always supposed to be?
Right, and I thought, okay, that's a line that I expected, basically.
Yeah, and it's a very particular line, so it sounds like there's a possibility he stays behind with her. Because I was thinking it was going to be more of a City at the Edge of Forever, Edith Keeler situation.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how they were setting up the role, or that's what we've had in the past, that if he falls in love, then she has to sort of decide to sacrifice her or not.
I actually am going to say that I think it's more likely that she goes with him to the future, and not that he stays there.
Like the Doctor, I think Gillian Taylor from Voyage Home. It goes with the future.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, that's what I'm feeling.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be an Edith situation.
I didn't mean to go back to that. Because what I'm thinking too is that would also resolve a bit the idea that he's brought this mother and child both onto the ship and they see all the technology. And I kept saying he's ruined this child's life because there's no way that this child can't tell friends, and when he does, they're going to say either you're crazy or...
But it's going to be an even bigger butterfly to just remove two entire people, other than the 30 henchmen they killed.
But it happens all the time.
The 30 henchmen that they've killed now, who would have presumably had kids or something, etc.
Yeah, they weren't bored.
Picard's not going to be for it, so the only way she can go in the future is if she stows away or accidentally goes into the future, and they don't have time to send her back. Which is,
well, no, it doesn't matter if Picard's not for it, because he can just do a facepalm and then they'll move on. It's fine. But anyway, yeah. So this is this moment, and I'm all for romance in Star Trek and any other show, but it's still one of those things where it's kind of like, I don't know. It doesn't necessarily feel.
Well, like we were talking about, I thought the romance was sort of better than most Star Trek episodes because they've had time to develop it, and like we compared it to more of like an action movie type romance in the last.
I don't hate it. I just. Yeah. So anyway, so he fixes the transporter. He says to her...
Yeah, so another transporter's been fixed.
Yeah, and he says, this just isn't my time. Yeah, so again, more transporty-dorty. And then here he is. He shows up in the nick of time, fixes it right when he needs to end up here to help
Picard
with the standoff, where they had nothing they could do in this moment. Like Brent Spiner had won. Dr. Soong, he had them cornered or whatever. I should not say Dr. Soong because it makes it sound like I'm talking about Noonien
Adam Soong.
Adam Soong. And so he shows up. So this was one of my favorite things in the whole episode for several reasons. So Soong's like, well, I assume that your guns from the future are probably pretty easy to use. And Rios is like, well, yeah, but they also, if
Well,
you,
that happens doesn't happen yet.
well, I think it's like, yeah, see?
Oh, it is an
Yeah.
X-Men. So before we talk about that,
Oh, okay.
this whole sequence that there's the fight sequence when the whole fight sequence when Rios beams in and saves them is cut at the same time as sort of the final sort of climax between the Borg Queen and Agnes over whether they're going to kill Seven or not.
Right.
And they kind of, it's a really sort of awkward cutting that they sort of, I think I've seen them before on Picard where they sort of try to have the A plot, the other, I don't even know if they're A plots or B plots or
Kind
how
of,
to
yeah.
make sense of it, but the two sort of plot climaxes, they cut them together in a pretty awkward way.
Yeah, they go from one and then back to the other and then back to the other, and they're kind of trying to weave them together. And sometimes it works really well to kind of build tension.
Yeah, that can work, but to me it just did not, just on a pure editing pacing point of view, it felt
Yeah,
very
it did
awkward.
feel, it felt clunky.
Because one was an action sequence, one was a battle inside of a head. I think they were trying to make that more intense by cutting it that way, but
Yeah.
to me it didn't work.
No, like I said, I think it felt kind of clunky and disorganized, chaotic. It didn't feel like kind of like, oh, we're getting somewhere, and not. Sometimes chaotic is good if you're meaning to edit in a chaotic way, but in this case, it felt accidental. Yeah. So here we go. If you don't mind us going back to this now.
Yeah.
Okay. So So he says this gun or this phaser. He doesn't call it phaser, but he's like, I'm sure this weapon can be used.
This future gun, yeah.
Yeah, not too difficult to use. And then Rios says, sure, but if your DNA doesn't match it, it will kaboom, it'll explode. I think he literally is like, actually, do we have a shot of that? No, I don't want to cut ahead too quickly. So here's Adam Sung looking at it, kind of going, like, you mean this is going to explode?
They're going zzz.
Yeah, it's building up in power. Now, this also must be the moment where he had a genius idea. This is going to explode. I can use this to my advantage, like an evil villain uses the smoke bomb and then disappears. Is that actually, like, when I say that, it's kind of like, but no, this is what he must be thinking, because in a couple seconds here, he takes this and boom. So this
it explodes.
kind of hard to see.
ducks.
But if you look closely in the background, you can still see his feet. So he's standing there. This thing explodes. He doesn't cover his eyes like Rios and Laris and Picard. They're all covering their eyes because he kind of threw it above them. He's now in this moment going, here is my perfect. Yeah, here's my perfect chance. Shoot, we didn't get we should have taken a shot of the empty hallway. Anyway, so then Tim noticed this because I didn't actually pick up on this. But Tim said right after that, they got their eyes shielded. And then they look up, and there's an empty hallway, and you hear a door slam.
You can hear the door slam. So he's gotten away.
Yeah,
he's out of the.
He's
and
gone.
they don't chase him.
And they don't chase him.
He's gone. We need a. He's the one risk that's left. That's going to potentially that the entire climax for the final episode is going to be the last thing that's going to stop the Europa mission.
Yeah,
and they just.
Even though he's
where does he go?
Even though he's the one that fell into it so arbitrarily, like this whole thing.
Yeah,
is like,
what's his motivation?
He has no motivation. But he sneaks away. His motivation is just, damn, I got away. Now I really got to be evil.
Where does he go? How does he get away? Like, he's just like this old man. I mean, Brent Spiner loves being a villain. That's like, I mean,
you mentioned that, and I was like, even for that reason, sure. Like, he does seem to be having fun, kind of being like.
But where did he go? It doesn't make.
He's in France.
He's in France. He's in the middle of France. The Borg Queen beamed him in there with all those.
Yeah, and she's gone out. Does he have control over a transporter?
Does he have his own transporter? He must have his own transporter.
He must.
Where is he? They're like. I mean,
he's running from France back to California
to stop the Europa mission.
Maybe Q will help him. No, Q can't help him because he can't do his thing.
I hope Q helps him because.
Well, I wish Q was in this. One of my biggest complaints is that Q has not been in the season nearly enough.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to do final shots about.
Let's
final
move on.
Thoughts about what we think the next episode.
Let's just quickly move on.
There's a lot we can say about.
So this was funny. Let us know what you think. I keep saying that. I want to know what you think. I thought this was hilarious. I thought it was so funny that he's this evil villain and he does a smoke bomb and runs away. So let's just quickly. So this wraps up the kind of the plot line of Picard and his memories and his mother. We finally find out what this bad, how it got so bad that Picard was trying to shut out this memory.
So he left the door open and she was able to get out.
And hang herself.
It's not clarified, but she must have felt. My sort of head logic says that she must have felt guilty about putting Jean-Luc in danger, and she thinks that I'm going to keep doing that as long as I'm still here, and the only response to my illness is to occasionally put me in a room. I'm going to eventually put Picard in. I'm going to put not Picard. I'm going to
Nobody
put Jean-Luc
Picard
in danger,
in a corner.
in danger again. So and that's why she commits suicide, or that's part of the melancholy or the depression that motivates her at this point.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you created all that. That's not said. And honestly, from the perspective of anyone just on a simple like plot, like you're just following what the plot gives you, you're just going to go, they played hide and seek. She wasn't well locked in a room. He left the door open and she hung herself. That's all they give you. I don't really. And then it was
in this room
tragic for Picard.
that we've sort of returned to the entire season, the observatory, I guess we call it.
Yeah. So that room was important. And so this affected Picard. You do see in the background, I pointed out after we took the still frame, you can see my mouse there, these two demons in the background. I don't know, like the imagery is certainly dark, and I get why that would traumatize a kid, but at the same time, now this is what they're giving us, is this was Picard's childhood. This is the big backstory that they've revealed for Picard. What does that mean for Picard's character? I have no idea. I don't like backstories for characters. Yeah, you were saying that earlier.
So many times I find in movies and TV series that are produced by or plotted like movies more so now, they always have like the one sequence, the backstory where they do in flashbacks. Or an example I think about is that Nobody with Bob Odenkirk, where it was, to me, the movie was almost completely ruined by them fleshing out his backstory too much. It would have been so much cooler if they just hinted at his backstory. And so many superhero movies and so many plots where they just put too much time that they have to do a big convoluted, cliched backstory. And it's always way worse than if they just hinted at something and left it open for the audience to imagine.
Yeah, I think
because
that's
being
the issue.
particular, it's just stupid. It doesn't really help Picard. I found, like I was saying earlier, just the way they were talking and the way they were dressed, to me, it just seems so silly this time around. It's such a cliche.
Yeah.
I'm watching this other show right now on Disney, Moon Knight. It's one of the Marvel shows. But basically, I don't want to do a big spoiler with that, but basically, it's narrative-wise quite different, but it's basically the exact same backstory.
Okay.
And they just had an episode where they did the same thing. They revealed the backstory, and it was a big catharsis thing, and with flashbacks. And the flashbacks was done sort of in an interesting way inside his head, like very similar to the way this show.
But you liked it better?
Well,
like it was done better?
I thought I was annoyed by it then too, and it was a cliche.
Oh, okay. This is your example of like this is a bad idea.
It was definitely better in that because it actually sort of made a little bit more sense, and it was done a little bit better in that. But it was still the exact same cliche backstory, and there was a little bit more violence with his mother that sort of explained mental illness, and they explore mental illness a lot more.
Okay.
But it's narratively different, but it's just, to me, it's just too much of a cliche, as I was saying.
Yeah, well, it feels like thrown together. Various pieces from various genres and ideas just seem kind of spackled together and then cemented into the wall of the catacombs, just like those poor Borg.
Yes, that have been there for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And I've got to point out his last line he just sort of throws in after this sort of reveal and the sort of the hug with Laris.
Oh, well, here. We haven't shown the hug yet, but yeah.
The hug with Laris. I used to imagine seeing her older, offering a cup of tea.
And a chat or something.
And a chat.
Yeah. So that's he says. Well, so you
ridiculous.
pointed out, because I didn't even pick up on this, but what they're trying to do, I think, and I think you're right about this, is they're trying to make sense out of the fact that there's a TNG episode with the Traveler.
Yeah, where no one has gone before in the first
where
season.
We
mentioned that when we first saw his mother.
Right. He sees visions of his mother. And she has like a tea cart, I think. And she's like, Picard, let's have a cup of tea. And she's old. She's an old
And he's
woman.
like super horrified by it too.
Yeah.
Like, you're not my mother.
Right. So the idea that like if he saw his mother like that, she made it to be an old lady, unless like really in that moment.
Yeah, and in sort of the back of my head, because learning that she committed suicide isn't actually that surprising with the way they were setting it up. But I think in my head I'd always kind of thought she also grew old because I'd seen her old in the earlier episode.
Yeah.
So it's sort of just like I imagined her old.
I imagined her old, offering me tea and wanting to chat or whatever.
Literally describing.
And then the other thing,
in case that happens, in case I am sent to an alternate galaxy, M33, where imagination happens in real life in front of you.
Right, that's what was going on there. I couldn't remember why he saw his mother. Yeah. There was like things you'd imagine would appear. So the other thing that you kept bringing up is Robert. Like, where's Robert?
Yeah, where's Robert?
Because there's the famous episode, I think, was it again Family or Brothers or whatever, where he's at Chateau Picard and he's hanging out with his brother. It's a great episode. Where's Robert? So they're hugging and it's kind of like this final, like he's revealed that this was what the trauma was. We see him break the window as a child, while at the same time cutting between that and the hug. So it's kind of like, yes, resolution. Okay, everyone, just deal with it. So now, let's kind of wrap this up.
Another character who got some resolution. So this entire season, Seven's been sort of dealing with, and she was a little bit the last season, sort of her past as a Borg, the prejudice she's felt as a Borg. Right. And then so for this season, because of the really convoluted cut over to the other dimension.
And why she doesn't have her Borg
she doesn't have her Borg transplant, but she's still the same person.
Yeah.
So
she's liking not having the implants, kind of feeling to her like, hey, everyone just sees me as a person now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
explain how that happens though.
So the way she gets here, the way she gets there is during that climax we were talking about. Agnes and the Borg Queen resolve to instead work together and sort of have a synthesis.
Yeah.
And she argues that the Borg could actually be a good guys, a force for good. And I don't want to get too much into this, but I've heard online sort of this idea of a future Star Trek series where the Borg end up being good guys, the doctors of the galaxy, and people volunteer to become Borg.
Right.
And they're still somewhat individualistic, but they become Borg because it makes them really good doctors. It seems like that's what they're developing. So in that dynamic, in the moment where she's trying to kill Seven, instead she saves Seven, but to save Seven, she's got to give her the nanites. So she's injured in the stomach.
Yeah, and she hooks up to her with all her tentacles.
She hooks up with the tentacles, and then she ends up with the exact same Borg implants that she had before. And the key is that they've talked about this before. She has a cranial implant in her brain.
Right.
That can't be removed. The doctor from Voyager couldn't remove it, and that's why she has that thing around her eye.
Right.
So that's significant, and that had to be re-added for her to survive.
So did it have to be re-added? Well, in the show,
that's the question.
Yes,
it just seems sort of arbitrary. And
because she has to look like Seven again. Like she has to look like
why?
the same. No, I know it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't actually make sense. But for the writers and for the people like working on the show, they're like she has to return to Seven. While it has to be because imagine if they had done the nanites or whatever, and somehow she looked different in another way. Like it just wouldn't have made sense, at least to the character of Seven. I don't think it makes sense for the nanites to like make her facial implant the exact same again, and then her to be like, "Well, here I am. I'm Seven again."
Yeah, they should have maybe make the injury closer to her face, and then have her slightly different implants.
Yeah.
And then, but part of what is implied here is that these are going to be the exact same people that go to the future, and it's the regular future that they're going to continue with.
Right. So they just look the same.
Which is super confusing and problematic because these aren't the original people. These are the alternate universe versions of the people who were evil.
Right.
That just happen to have the brains of the other people.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense for them to be the same people that end up going back.
Right. I agree with you.
I mean, that's what they're suggesting now, but it's really convoluted about why that happened. Why?
Oh, and there was something else that I wanted to bring up that you.
Well, we need to talk about the Borg Queen and the time back to the first episode.
Oh, well, the thing I was going to bring up.
And then also the deal, a ship.
The deal, yeah. So can you bring that up again? So let's, because I think we've probably close to how long have we been going?
50 minutes. We want to.
Yeah, so close to now. So we want to.
But there's still a lot we want to talk about. I think for the last episode.
Yeah, well, let's because
So the Borg Queen takes the ship because after she saves the Seven, she says,
"We made a deal,
a ship for life." Mm-hmm. Who did she make that deal with?
Yeah.
Raffi, because she hit Raffi the second time,
and Raffi was on the floor like unconscious.
So she was knocked out
apparently.
So she wasn't there for that sort of final conflict.
Seven was just in pain, so she wasn't making.
Seven was out of it. Who did she make a deal for? Why? Why did she want
Agnes
the ship?
Gave the ship to the Borg Queen to save Seven, right? That's what the deal was.
No, but it sounded like she was saying she made the deal with Seven. Within that,
I think it was for Seven, and I'm just realizing that now. Actually, I do think that makes sense because I think she was making the deal with Agnes and Borg Queen were kind of talking back and forth.
Oh, okay, so
I think that must have been the deal.
Confusing.
That Agnes said, although it doesn't really make sense because Agnes was convincing, I thought, the Borg Queen to be good. So why did she then say, "I'll give you the ship if you're good"? You know what I mean?
But anyway, I think
that was the deal.
So now she doesn't want the ship to stop the Europa mission anymore. She never really
doesn't care about that anymore.
She never really cared about that. That was, for some reason, she told Adam Soong to care about that for confusing reasons, but she never cared about that. But she wants the ship to go off and make a good Borg collective now?
Yeah.
But still 400
with
years
Agnes
in the past?
and leave? And 400 years in the past, yeah.
So
can she take that to the future? I mean, I'm assuming yes. She
but
can also go to the future. And then I was kind of wondering, how are they going to get back to the future? Back to the future. But how are Picard and his crew going to get back to the future? They said they needed the Borg Queen to time travel. She's gone. Yeah. And they don't have a ship.
No, it doesn't make sense for her to leave at this point.
Maybe they'll use a boat.
Also, presumably, whatever they got to do in the next episode will be more useful if they have a ship and a Borg Queen to help them.
She'll come back. She'll be like, I forgot you guys.
It just seems so arbitrary that she's just like, I leave now.
I leave now.
On the ship. It just...
Yeah. I agree. But it happened. So then they see the ship leave. They all watch it, and then they all end up together after the ship has left.
Yeah,
And
it's
they
got
all
that
kind
sort
of summarize, well, this is where we're at now, but hey, now we have to stop Adam Sung.
And I think Seven says this, although I don't know how
Adam
Seven...
Sung must be stopped.
I don't know how Seven even knows this, but she's the one who says, Adam Sung is in the wind.
In the wind.
Where is he? Where'd he go? He's
Yeah.
still... Because we talked just the rhythm of this scene, because I think we did do screenshots that sort of established it. The two of them watch the ship go up.
Yeah. This year?
Yeah. Rios runs up to them first.
yeah.
Rios had a head start because they stayed behind in the observatory
in
to
this-
sort of
in this
resolve the
moment.
hug and learn about the suicide.
Yeah.
Then immediately they come
They
up
come
before
up.
the ship is even, and then they watch the ship
Then they watch
completely
the
go
ship
up.
go away,
So
yeah.
this has got to be very close to where they were.
Yeah, it
the
has to
place.
be. Yeah. They
So-
got there very quickly.
Where's Sung right now? Running through the woods around
He's in
France?
the woods. He's on. Hey, maybe he's on the ship. No, that'd be weird.
That'd be weird. It wouldn't make it. It's
Why would he be? But like, yeah, no. Where is he? He's probably picking some grapes to make some wine or something, isn't he? Anyway, well, it doesn't matter. The point is Sung is they're like their focus is high. They're like, we have to stop him.
Yeah, so we've gotta
now,
work together.
He's now the big bad guy. Which to me, I'm like, Anyway, like Q, like. Get rid of it. Like rewrite this.
rewrite it.
Rewrite this.
Oh, there is an important plot point.
And let's make it what it
Borg
should have been.
Queen-
Q. It doesn't need to be Adam Sung. It could have been Q the whole time doing a lot of this stuff, pulling threads, strings, trying to get the Borg Queen, even him influencing the Borg Queen. And then finally the Borg Queen leaves, and now we're left with Q. And then they say, we got to go and stop Q instead of Adam Sung, who like, now his daughter's gone. Maybe she'll come back in the next episode. Maybe not. He's just angry about lots of stuff. I think for sure we're not going to see that FBI guy again that you thought we need to see for like resolution. I don't think we're seeing him.
No,
ever
he was
again.
just in one episode. What even was that?
I don't know.
What even was that? But, there's a clear plot
Vulcans.
point. The Borg Queen, before she leaves, because in effect to help them, but not actually help them, she just says there needs to be two Renees, one to live to one to die. And I think Seven tells Picard that here,
Yeah.
and Picard just like, whatever, I don't care.
Yeah, he's like, we make our own future.
Yeah,
like
no,
we
he says,
make our
I
own.
refuse to accept an outcome that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, well, this is an important piece of information the Borg Queen gave you to help you, and then he's just like, I refuse that. I'm sure he says that, but it's gonna be a point. Like something's gonna come up that they deal with that. But it reminds me a lot of the first season where they had a lot to do with like the twins. Remember where there was like. Oh gosh, I always forget their names.
Oh, Soji
and gosh,
we had it a while ago.
Anyway, the point is like there was kind of all this imagery with like the
Daj,
and there was all this imagery with like this culty thing where like the twins
Vaj
were important.
Vater.
Yeah, and the twins were important. The imagery of twins, and it never really meant anything.
Yeah,
and it almost feels like that where they try to like hint to things that like imply depth, but never really get like so where they're like one must die and one must live, and this. We'll see how they resolve that, but I have a feeling it'll literally be like...
Or like all the stuff that Q was saying about that sort of like existential things about Q having being onto death and...
The path less taken.
The path less taken. I mean, there's sort of this like...
all these things that they have not paid off at all.
A historical man or the man without a past.
Yeah.
Like that all sounds like it
cool.
should be important plot things that are interesting things to explore with characters.
Oh, for sure. Like, and when Q says it, like I also, when he first, so the first episode, I was like, okay, this is cool. Was he in the first episode? Yeah, he was at the very end, right?
And then he was sort of, in the second episode, he really framed
right,
things.
but the first episode when he appeared and there was Guinan and there was all this stuff, it wasn't just nostalgia. Yes, nostalgia is part of it. But I was like, I like where this is going. Having Q enter in and say all those cool things to Picard. I was like, I hope those things aren't just cool things he's saying. I hope he really, they get into like the path less, the path not taken, this idea of Picard making mistakes, this idea of, what was this decision Picard made that affected the future in such a drastic way. I thought this is going to be cool to explore this. I don't feel like they have, and I feel like really Q has been so underutilized in this season. Like he appears once in a while to just kind of be kind of like a weird counselor for Renee and just be like, hey, don't do the Europa mission.
Or the Freud accent.
Yeah, like, so to me, I'm just like, I expected different. I expected this whole season to be really
Yeah,
a lot of Q kind of.
It hasn't lived up to my hopes in the first two episodes. One thing I think we touched a little bit about this in the last episode when we were talking is that it's been a very tonally all over the place. Other than sort of just like arbitrary plot threads all over the place, they've also had, like you were talking about, there was like the Ocean's 11, James Bond sort of gala. There was like a horror element stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of horror elements that surprised me.
There was sort of like a romantic
action,
adventure,
of course.
Action,
adventure,
there was
romance.
like the Terminator movies,
Yeah.
stuff that was in there. And the thing is that the first two episodes were like the Star Trek: The Next Generation episodes we liked,
Yeah.
riffing episodes.
Right.
They weren't, and then to me, it feels like it was. I kind of feel ripped off by that, and that it wasn't actually being like a Star Trek episode. It was just like, before we do the heist gala,
before the chaos begins.
Well, before we do an episode that's like the heist gala, we'll do a couple episodes that where we're sort of rehashing elements that visually and thematically remind you of yesterday's Enterprise and Cause and Effect and your favorites and First Contact and Journey Home, like a lot of, like I keep calling it, like a lot of my favorite movies and episodes. But not actually consistently stick with actually trying to make good Star Trek, just try to go all over the place.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I'm definitely very disappointed with this season.
It ended up being more like the last season.
I would almost say maybe worse. Which is
I want
to like it.
Right now, it seems worse.
I want to like it. I really. Well, there's one episode left to redeem that.
Yeah, and it's possible. I like the last episode and some elements of the first season.
Sure. Oh yeah, I think there was elements that I liked about it. Overall, though, it, in my opinion, was not great. It didn't feel cohesive, basically. And this is even more so, I think, feeling a little discombobulated. It feels like maybe they needed a few more a little more workshopping of the scripts. They needed to maybe edit a little, take some stuff out, simplify, simplify some plot points, take out some of the running around, but then complicate. Like, make more complex some of the important plot points. Like, for instance, the stuff that Q said to Picard. Like, really deal with what it means to, like, not make a choice or make a choice. And that's what I think TNG did so well with Q. Like, when they would do the things where he'd put human race on trial, and then they'd have to really dig into, like, what is justice or what decisions do we make. And here we have Q. And then dealing with Q, like, this could have been huge, too. Dealing with a race like Q who is dealing with mortality. I want to see that more. I want to see, like, how's he dealing with that? What's he doing? It would almost be interesting if he was trying to find love, because one of the things human beings do when we're going to die, and we know our lives are finite, is we try to seek out love. We try to, like, procreate. There's things we do to try to deal with death. Try to find meaning.
He did make this big point about, like, I thought in death I'd find meaning.
But he kind of brushed it off very quickly and was like, but I didn't. So now what? I don't know. Like, where's the lesson? What has he figured out? And I mean, I'm sure in the last episode they'll have a speech of his, or you'll hear him talk and he'll say something interesting, but maybe. But I just think, man, what a missed opportunity. Like, first of all, just because Q is such a cool character, you can still include a lot of this other stuff, but just make the main focus Q, make the main focus Picard dealing with this thing. Because again, this catacombs, this basement, this hide and seek stuff, it was so convoluted. I was like, what is really the relationship with the mother? I didn't even feel a connection between the kid and the mother. And they kept going back
to it. Like, I didn't even think it was necessary to rehash it again.
No, they were losing me on it. Like, every time they'd cut back to it, I'd almost be more confused and more like, okay, like, what am I supposed to think or feel in relation to this? And then suddenly they're like, well, she hung herself. So you're supposed to be sad. You're supposed to see that he was traumatized. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that. But, like, again, and let's keep in mind that this whole thing happened because Q said, there was a thing that happened that created a divergence in the timeline, and now you have to go back and try to fix that from happening. And it was in 2023, so they have to go back to 2023. And
the divergence in the timeline was them bringing a Borg queen from an alternate universe back in time to 2024, so the Borg queen could motivate Adam Soong.
2023.
2024?
I thought it was 20. Hey, whatever.
It could motivate Adam Soong to stop their Europa mission.
But he didn't.
I think they discover something in the Europa mission. Well, presumably it's life on Europa or something like that changes that hurts his, like, plan of discovering life. I don't know, and somehow hurts him. So he's got this So none of it was. It's a really awkward. And we've had these before where it was really just them causing the thing they're solving in the time loop. They were really just causing the thing that they're fixing, and that's definitely happened before in time loops. But they've sold it better.
Well, okay, so yeah. Anyway, the point I was going to make is like, one, and as you're saying that, I'm like, even if you pitch that to me, elevator pitch, how would you do it? Like, there's so much confusing stuff with that. Like, so as you're kind of saying it back to me, I'm like, that's just too confusing. Like, simplify.
Why'd they even have the alternate universe? Because at the time it was just like everyone loves the mirror universe episodes. That's a cool thing to do. One thing I just
that's true. They didn't need to do that, did
No.
they? They literally could have just dealt with the Q in the timeline
and gone back in time.
Sure. Yeah, true. Yeah, they could have just had like a time travel thing, but like not necessarily an alternate like offshoot where everyone's evil. Like
It could have been like Tapestry or First Contact, where they see the outcome because they're in a bubble or something. One other thing I just want to throw in there is that, and this is just, I don't know if people still talk about this, but people were worried that Picard would be too political or too woke or some ridiculous stuff like that. This hasn't been at all whatsoever. There's been no politics, no wokeness, nothing like that whatsoever.
Well,
I mean, because the last time that they were sort of political is when they were in the alternate universe. That was a political thing because they were in a fascist state. But that's not any more political that's less political than like an original series episode where they go to the mirror universe and it's a fascist state. You know what I mean? It's been the least political and least woke Star Trek I've ever seen.
Oh, there was something. Oh, well, the one thing that I guess I picked up on, at least in this, and maybe they were making a bit of a statement, was like, Jurati trying to convince the Borg Queen to give individualism, to let people have a voice, to let them. So I kind of sensed a bit of a like, the idea of how it can be so dangerous for people to not think for themselves and just kind of follow a leader and have a collective brain. But yeah,
I don't think they explored that. I think that's so comparing
not to a great degree.
Comparing the Borg collective and like fascism, authoritarianism, and people who follow that is actually an interesting comparison. But I don't think they did do that.
Not very well. Like, I think it was just kind of a brief when Agnes was kind of saying, well, this could be beautiful and you could let them explore their individuality, was kind of what I got out of that, saying, and then letting them explore their individuality could be your greatest strength. And to me, I was like, that's a pretty strong statement towards, or to be anti-fascist, to say, because often saying, well, this person's different, so let's oppress them or let's do this. And it's actually like, no, don't oppress the differences. Use them. So that to me was but it was really quick. And it's
I didn't see that as a particular political thing, because there's a really old sort of Star Trek Federation saying infinite diversity and infinite diversity, infinite combinations.
Okay.
I'm saying that wrong, but anyway, that's been a theme of the Federation since day one. It's like the motto of the Federation is that a bunch of different people working together. So I didn't see that as sort of a unique sort of political thing that came up. I thought that was just classic join the Federation rhetoric.
Okay. I don't know.
They always go back to it. Always back to like individuals
like
working
me,
together
it was
is why they're better.
Kind of at least a beautiful statement to say, like, certainly that it's important to see difference as a strength, not a weakness. But yeah, no, like,
and that's something Star Trek's
always
gone back to.
No, but I mean, this season certainly has not really shone light on anything very critical, like social commentary, to kind of where you watch it and you're like, yeah, I really agree with that, and that's really powerful.
And we sort of thought they were going to do that in like the first couple episodes.
Well, they didn't. Like, so they could have done stuff with mental health, which would have been great.
They really should have done something.
But they actually did the opposite. They actually did some things where I feel like it's very damaging to mental health care, and like people that try to fight for destroying stigmas of like people should be locked away and put in rooms and treated like they need to be hidden, and it was traumatizing for Picard. They don't deal with it that's traumatizing because it was wrong. It's just like it's traumatizing because she hung herself, and then it's also like saying, this is for people who are mentally ill, they are put away, and if you unlock the door for them, they'll go kill themselves. Like, so super problematic. Wasn't a fan of that. Makes me sad because I believe Patrick Stewart with these seasons, I think, really wanted to say some really important things. And there's been a couple moments. I did like the speech he gave to Renee about kind of like fear and not letting that, defeat. And I did like that. But
we should have had way more Renee.
That's also another
like
very
seriously
good point.
Cut out like 50% of
more
what
Renee, more Q,
and had an arc of Renee. Maybe have some of our.
She's a good
Renee's back.
She was interesting to me.
I think she was. We never really saw her.
But what we knew about her is that she's an astronaut.
An astronaut,
who's
but she's
very intelligent.
But uncertain
uncertain about herself, and that she has a lot of fear related to it. That's interesting. I would have even loved to see her kind of on the mission, like, going into space, and like maybe somehow in that moment, like Picard gets on like a intercom and is talking to her, and he's like saying like in that moment, and then all of a sudden she's seeing space and she's seeing the beauty, and she's like, it is worth it, and that's what exploration is about. That's what humanity is about.
I was going to say we should have spent time getting her backstory instead of inventing one for Picard like this.
100% agree. I don't mind. Yeah, like when they kind of went into this whole situation, they were like, let's again make Chateau Picard be like one of the center pieces of this whole thing, and let's focus on his past, and let's focus on something that happened to him when he was younger. At first, I was like, cool, we're going to learn more about Picard.
Yeah,
but as it went on, I just realized they're not giving us anything new. They're not giving us anything original. It's literally just like, stereotypical kind of like, a mother who's like mentally ill, and they lock her up and he's sad about it, and then she kills herself. And it's like, okay, so that was Picard's past now. But yes, so instead of taking that time, maybe still kind of a little bit of his past, but yeah, let us get to know Renee. Let us get to know, also, we could have learned more about kind of the Picard family through Renee, right? So not even just Picard's past, but kind of distant family history, like the Picard family. What was their history? Maybe that could have affected things more than just, Picard had like a difficult childhood. What if like maybe in the past the Picard family like went through some really traumatic stuff that she had to overcome, and that it kind of seeped through the generations or something. I don't know. There's so much stuff. So again, would have really liked to see more focus on Q. Would have really liked to see more focus on exploring Renee. I almost wish they hadn't done the Dr. I keep calling him Dr. Adam Sung plotline, and the bringing back Soji as this genetically altered, because it's just too much. It's
complicated.
Hasn't
had a payoff,
and it doesn't have a payoff. And I'm sure they will try to have a payoff, but even if it does, I think it'll be a little too late to say.
I really hope it's not the cliche payoff where in the end Sung sacrifices himself and she's like, "Oh, he really loved me all." Like
I don't think that's going to happen, because they've gone so far to him being evil that I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think he's going to be redeemed. I don't. And if he is, I don't think it's going to have anything to do with his daughter, because
it's just going to be an arbitrary motivation change.
Yeah, like Picard might give him a speech and say, well, no, the future is actually this way. And because Picard actually started to give him a bit of that speech at one point. He said, no, the future, you were convinced it's a better future. It's actually,
yeah,
I forget exactly.
To be honest,
I forget the
any
details,
normal person could probably be convinced by that, particularly from hearing Picard describe the future versus hearing the half-Borg queen describe a future. Like
a scary character who's saying, if you do this, you'll have a great future.
Doesn't this look great as I assimilate these guys?
Yeah, should I trust the like half robot, evil looking, who not only looks evil but speaks evil? Like, isn't just kind of like, no, I'm good. Like we're working together here. It's basically like, anyway. So, so much from watching the series so far and almost over just seems to be taking me one way and another way and another way and another way, and I'm trying to follow along, and I'm just kind of being led down all these different paths, just thinking like, I so badly just wanted to focus on a few things that I can just really grab onto.
Well, I think this episode did try to wrap up a lot. So sort of for a final thought, is there anything we want to say?
I was going to say, speaking of wrapping up, I wanted to segue.
That's what I was trying to do. Is there anything we want to say about the last, the coming episode? Because I feel like it'd be an interesting thing to talk about what we think is going to actually happen in the last episode. Because they've wrapped up, they've tried to wrap up a lot of stuff in this episode, actually. Most of the characters' arcs, I think, are wrapped up. Like Picard's backstory's wrapped up, Raffi's wrapped up, Seven's wrapped up.
Well, no, Raffi's not wrapped up because we still need
up.
to know if Elnor like legit comes back. It's not like he's still dead, and she didn't just see a hologram of him and say like, well, everything's good now because the hologram told me everything's good.
But I think narratively, and when we go back to whatever the regular timeline is again, I sort of thought they go back to at the start of this season. I sort of thought they go back to the regular timeline earlier and wrap up more stuff. Anyway,
yeah, I remember you saying that, but you were wrong.
I was wrong. Either way, either Elnor's going to be there or not. I think her arc is wrapped up though.
Yeah, so I think you're probably right, because I don't think they're going to have enough time to sufficiently wrap it up. Better choice would have probably been to leave him out of this episode. You could still have like a hologram defense mechanism, which could have been cool. Leave him out of the episode, or keep it Elnor, but it's like Elnor that has no emotions, and then do bring him back in some way where it's resolved between her and the real Elnor in some way if he does come back. If not, I'm always just going to feel like that was If that's the way they resolve that plot line, I'm okay, sure.
Elnor's gone for good.
Yeah, he's gone for good, and it was just a hologram.
Elnor didn't
And
die.
now Raffi's fine about it.
An alternate universe version of Elnor sort of died, who would have died anyway because he was already being captured by the authoritarian state. Remember? He was going to be executed anyway, I think.
Oh, well then, who cares?
What I'm saying is, like...
I don't know. I can't follow all that. Like,
and
to me,
Elnor
none of that,
happening to die
all
in an
that stuff is
alternate universe
confusing.
doesn't really mean that he has to die in the regular... I don't know.
Okay. Well, anyway, let's so that's not super important to me. We never so in the other universe before the kind of bad universe, they were building this kind of love connection between Laris and Picard.
Oh yeah.
Remember? And then she when he beamed away or whatever, and she was like standing there, and he just like left her.
Well, this version of Laris,
was that also something they're not going to try to come back to at all? Because it was building to me something that was actually really interesting.
I don't see how they have time.
They just didn't care about it.
This version of Laris has ended up being a very close relationship with him because of her being his like spirit guide. Or
yeah, now he'll go back to the other Laris and she'll be like, "I love you, Picard," and he'll be like, "But I'm in love with the Watcher version of you." It's not you, but it is you. And that's also what makes it confusing. We talked about this before. When you use the same actors to play different universe, like she's not even a Laris in a different timeline. She's not Laris at all. She just looks exactly like Laris, unless at some point they're like, no, she was Laris all along. Actually, maybe that'll happen.
I always
really
kind of thought that was the case.
Yeah. Well, there we go. That's my prediction.
It sort of makes sense that a Watcher like the Gary Seven character could be around for hundreds of years,
right?
And have a job to like keep track of Picard later on.
Yeah, it's possible. So anyway, so
they're gonna wrap up Q somehow. Yeah, I don't even know. Right
I don't even. Yes, I think it's so all over the place that it's hard to make a prediction because I'm like, well, what was the last thing we saw with Q? Well, with the FBI agent, and he just walked in because he couldn't snap.
Yes, that was an FBI. Yeah,
So
it's actually kind of funny.
Yeah,
but he only talked to Guinan, not to.
And he just said, "Oh, remember that people have." What did he say?
Well, he explained quite a lot of his death and.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, there was a lot of
and
that
then
exposition.
And then he made a really big point about that thing I was saying about like the unhistorical man or people's past will always define them.
So yes, that's what I was trying to. Yeah, they let their past define them, and
like I said, I keep trying to read that as sort of a philosophical existentialist thing.
Yeah,
because it's parallel to that, the language.
Sure, and we'll see what happens. So anyway, prediction. Well, obviously Q will be involved because they have to involve him. I think, here's my prediction. It's not going to be a good one. I should have thought of this before and written it down. But I think that Adam Soong is the main bad guy. He's like full evil. I think Q is actually going to somehow get meaning to his life by helping Picard in that situation. And that's going to give him meaning. And at the end of it, Q's going to die.
Yeah,
he's going to go, Q's going to die. That's going to be the character. Yeah, Q's going to die. Q's going to die, but he's going to be like, I helped humanity. Why did I do Picard's voice? Either way, I think Q's going to die.
But he's going to sacrifice himself.
But he's going to sacrifice himself. And that gives him, because he's all freaked out
about
he doesn't have meaning.
His last sort of like Q power he'll use to like send them
Set
home.
it back. Yeah. I think we got it. I think we nailed it.
I don't like it. It seems
you're not gonna like it, I don't think. But anyway. Well, what else could happen? Q has to be involved. He needs to find meaning. She's shown that as his biggest
I don't think
issue.
we're gonna see the FBI again. He was a one episode guy.
Yeah, I know.
Do we see Guinan again?
Yes.
I think we have to.
Yes, I think we'll see Guinan again.
And we have to.
Jonathan Frakes is going to show up and save the day again.
I hope so.
Riker's going to just be like, dur, dur, dur. He's going to show up on a horse this time though, and just like shoot an arrow.
I really hope that happens. And we'll definitely see Soji or whoever she is.
You think? I don't think we're going to.
We don't get to see her again
actually,
at all.
you know what?
No, I think we have to. And it's and I think it's going to somehow resolve the Adam Soong plot. I think Adam Soong dies.
Oh no, it will resolve that plot, but I think they will. But I think it will be that he just stays evil.
I think he dies, but he doesn't redeem himself. Like I thought he was going to redeem himself an episode ago. But like your point about how
he's too evil.
He's just gone too Scooby Doo, too Gargamel.
Yeah, he's Gargamel. Next episode, he'll have a cat on his lap.
Like Claw.
Yeah. Was it Dr. Claw? I feel like it was Dr. Claw.
It would have to be a Dr. Claw.
And he'd be like, Gadget, I'll get you. And then he'd like smash the desk and the cat would run off.
And then he sneaks away and the door slams.
Yeah.
Every episode he gets away.
So
Every
yeah, and then
episode
he's
his plot
just
is
like next
foiled.
season 2, he's in it, and he's just always like, I would have had them too if it wasn't for those meddling Picard. Yeah, so I think we're good. I don't really know. Like, I don't really even want to predict much because I'm so confused by it all. I'm confused by the simplicity of the complexity of the confusement. So to me, it's not that I'm like, I don't get it. It's that I'm just, there's too much going on that they'll go any direction because they haven't really set it up in a way, and maybe that was their trick all along.
And there's no payoffs.
It was the bait and switch, and in the end they'll do something so cool because we'll be like, we didn't see that coming. Because they just confused us so much.
Yeah, it still could be kind of awesome or cool in some
I'm
way.
being sarcastic, but
No, I'm being sort of.
He's got hope.
I have hope that it can still be cool.
Okay, good.
And they did immediately. They've already filmed the 3rd season. They immediately sort of.
Oh, and
filmed
the
that.
teaser was amazing. We need to do an episode where we just talk about the teaser.
We talked about it quickly.
Well, we should do like a
all
live
I'm
viewing
saying
of it
is
or
that
something.
the fact that they already know what they're going to do in the next season is something that they can use in the last episode of this season to sort of go into it better.
I don't even like that. Like, I would rather them just pretend this season didn't happen, start the next one. Because even having any attachment to this season of the next, I'm going to be like, oh yeah.
No, maybe
You know what I mean?
Maybe it'll be one big.
Like, are they going to make some
undo
stupid
button.
joke where like Riker's going to be like, you know, oh yeah.
One big undo button.
Apple Z.
Yeah, well, people
Command
used to say
Z.
Voyager always had a big undo button.
Oh, true. Yeah,
because
yeah.
a lot of its plots were sort of wrapped up that way.
But at least it was episodic, so you can kind of do that.
Yeah.
Well, no, actually, Voyager was less episodic because they kept the whole. It's not like
Well,
one episode
that's
they
sort
went.
of an argument / critique of Voyager is that it did not handle being episodic versus not episodic very well. They sort of had.
Well, and maybe that's some of the issues that Star Trek has always had with trying to bridge the gap between episodic and
probably is.
non-episodic.
They did well with Deep Space Nine in many cases, and I think this type of plotting ended up doing a lot better. I like Discovery. I thought the last season of Discovery was.
I still need to watch it.
Was really good, much better than this.
Yeah.
In the end, yeah.
Well, it's not hard to be much better than this, and I hate to say it, and I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm really not. I really wanted to like it. I love Patrick Stewart. I think not all the characters are bad, and I like some of them, and I like some of the stuff they were trying to do. But overall, I'm just, like you said, I'm just disappointed. But so let us know what you think. If you have a prediction, probably talking to Mac mostly. And I think there was maybe a message at one point that I missed.
Was there a message?
Maybe not on the YouTube, but somewhere, because we haven't been up to date on as much as we should have. But yeah, what do you think? What's going to happen in the last episode? Is it going to redeem itself? Is it going to be something where all of a sudden we're all blown away by like, oh, they tricked us into thinking the series was bad, but really
it was good.
Yeah, in the last episode, like something will happen where we'll be like, it
somehow,
all made sense.
And somehow retconned everything to be genius.
Yeah. Well, so do you think that will happen? And if so, let us know. Or do you think, or are you liking it? Maybe you completely disagree and you think all this has been great. And honestly, like any opinion is valid. You're just wrong.
I'd be really interested to hear an opinion that thought this season was much better.
If we had more viewers, I'm sure there'd be a few.
Really?
We don't have a great large sample size, Tim. So.
To be honest, I haven't really looked at a lot of other reviews for Picard.
I've talked to my brother about it, and he's been just the same way, being like, "What the heck am I watching? It's confusing."
Yeah, I haven't really heard anything
silly. Or what did
you
put it a certain way? It's not that it's confusing. It's you said like too silly or too. It's just like too silly at this point. Or
I said bonkers at one point.
Yeah, you said bonkers.
I definitely found some of it silly.
So there you go. Let's say goodbye to them one more time before episode 10, where everything suddenly is genius. So thank you for tuning in. And as always, did you want to? Can we do the sign off?
Yep.
And as always, where are we? Here we are. And as always, I hope we kept you engaged. Sip, sip.
Ooh.
Tune in next time. Thursday.
Next Thursday, one more episode.
One more episode. It's going to be the best one so far.
Switching to the outro.
See you later.